We will call to order the Planning Commission of Oconee County. It is Monday, February 3rd. It is 6 p.m. First order of business will be the invocation. Mr. Root.
Yes, sir. Pray with me if you'd like to. Well, dearest Father, thank you for this day that you have made. I hope we have rejoiced and really been glad in it, because as a gift, we were not promised tomorrow, and help us to keep that perspective. While we're doing that, though, we have to plan and have a vision, and so I pray that you'd give this planning commission that vision, a vision guided by your wisdom, your insight, and your foreknowledge, so they could understand, see things beyond our own capacities as humans, which are lacking and tainted, and we really need your help. So just pray you'd guide this meeting, that it would be your meeting, and you'd preside over it. In your name I pray, amen.
Amen.
Mr. Hayes, will you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is the approval of minutes from January 6, 2025. Is there a motion?
So approved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Or to abstain. Our next order of business is the election of officers. We will start with nominations for the chair.
Nominate Mike Johnson for chairman.
Do you accept, sir?
Yes, I'll accept the nomination.
Any other nominations? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. All in favor? It's unanimous. Congratulations, Mr. Chairman. I'll turn the meeting over to you.
That was easy.
We do have some public comments, so we'll need a vice chair and a secretary.
Okay. We'll do that first, is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay, we need a nomination for a vice chairman. for the
I'll
planning
nominate Dave Nix.
commission. Are there any other nominations? All right. All in favor of Dave Nix as vice chairman, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
It's unanimous.
I saw he beat you to that. Okay. Public comments for non-agenda items. We have one, Mr. Markovich. We have 4 minutes.
Very good. Thank you. For the record, I'm Tom Markovich. I wanted to talk to you tonight about setbacks and something that needs to be addressed in the setbacks. And that is the last item in 38 9.3. And it has to do with what's allowed in the yards and basically what's allowed in the setback. And currently, freestanding fences, freestanding walls, hedges, septic tank lines, not the tanks, but the lines, can all be in the setback. What's missing is retaining walls. And we are in a very hilly environment here in Oconee County. And I'll be honest, I've built houses here for over 45 years. And there's not many I've built that I haven't had to employ retaining walls. And in fact, I built one house. We spent more on retaining walls and foundation than the whole rest of the house cost. And so, anyway, and I encountered a situation recently where somebody was in a private subdivision and they wanted to put in a retaining wall. But they couldn't because it's not in the ordinance. It's not listed as one of the items that can be put in there. I think it really needs to be. Recently, there's been several appeals to the Board of Zoning Appeals to address this whole issue of retaining walls. And to me, there's very little difference between a retaining wall and a freestanding wall. or if somebody decided wanted to put up a rock fence, there's nothing to prevent them, it's a fence. Or if they put up a brick wall for a fence, there's nothing to prevent that because it's a fence. But a retaining wall, for some reason, it's just not listed, and somehow it's interpreted to be different, and it's really not. And so, I would really, and the other thing is that I think about what happens in some of these subdivisions, especially the private ones, where these setback requirements didn't apply for the longest time. In fact, they didn't really come into play until 2012. And before that, it was purely by the performance standards, and the performance standards always excluded all the private subdivisions. And then in 2012, there was a change, and it's been changed again recently. But nonetheless, so what you've got subdivisions, some private subdivisions, where they were able to, if they came into being before 2012, they could put retaining walls wherever. But after the thing changed, all of a sudden, no, they're not allowed anymore. So now you've got an issue where you got part of a subdivision, a private subdivision, they can have it, and other parts they can't. And so that creates a whole different issue in terms of how they're being treated, whether or not there's equal protection there. Anyway, it's a very simple little thing to just ask the council to amend the ordinance and add retaining walls. I highly recommend it. Thank you. That's all I got.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Point of order, did we elect the secretary?
We did not elect a secretary. Would you like to change seats? I'd appreciate it. We do need to do that. As far as a nomination for secretary, does someone want to make a nomination, or I'd be happy to make a nomination that Mr. James Coley do that job?
You should open up for nominations.
Is there anyone that would like to nominate anyone else? All right, all those in favor of Mr. Coley continuing that job, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that a paying job for him?
Thank you.
know.
Yes.
Don't know. All right, let's see. Let's go to commission member comments. Do we have any comments from commission members? Yes, sir.
I'd like to welcome our new members, Mr. Marcingill from District 5 and Mr. Frable from District 4.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for helping us out.
Absolutely. Not sure how you got roped into it, and if your arms are still sore from being arm twisted. Thank you for doing that. What other comments do we have?
Well, I'd like to thank Mr. Markovich. He's a constant for us, and I would like to see more people show up and voice their concerns or their future plans for Oconee County. Because if you don't, it leaves us up to us to guess and do what we think is best, because we're not getting input. So I'd like to appeal to the citizens to come, show up. We'd love to hear from you.
I appreciate Mr. Markovich's comments this next year. I hope that we can continue looking into 32 and 38 and find out where there's errors or overlaps or missing data and things like that, and try to make those corrections this year. All right. Any other comments? For now, let's go to number 8, the discussion regarding the scenic highway ordinance. Last meeting, we had asked Mr. Root to come through with some changes based on the recommendations that we were making. I think Mr. Root has those in red. Could I get you to go on and take over from here?
Yes, sir. Glad to. And as you recall, Mr. Haney had drafted a slight rewrite, particularly of section 26-153. That's what y'all debated off of, talked off of. Mr. Nix made the motion, had the notice requirement, and then a revision to section A, removal of, I think, what was prior B, and essentially asked me to put it into a new form. So that's what you have. The red lines are the additions. The one change, I think, is that I tweaked A. Let me look at what Mr. Haney had given us. I tweaked A a little bit because it was borrowing from it, which I did also, from the zoning notice ordinances, but it was borrowing from the zoning provisions that once we made the initial revision based on Mr. Nix's motion, it didn't line up. So yeah, it was the first item. So A was reduced down to what you see here. But what we captured was who can apply, that it has to be everybody, everyone who's contiguous to the right of way, and then you see the notice dates and how I worked those for both notice for the planning commission, meeting for consideration, and the county council's ultimate public hearing and adoption of the ordinance or not. And those are, I wouldn't say verbatim, but the essence of the notice requirements is essentially done the same way as I understood the goal, at least to frame this up for further discussion, would be the same way as a small area rezoning, something of that nature, because it carries that same, or an impact on the property rights of these landowners who'd be adjacent to the highway. So that's what I did, and I don't know if it's meeting exactly where y'all want to go now, but that was my instructions. So I think I hit the instructions, haven't watched the meeting again. It's just a matter of where, tell me if I didn't hit it, something that needs to be revised, or there was still some, I guess, some lingering debate on, whether you wanted 100% of folks to sign off on the application or not. I don't know if there's that debate still, or if this just meets it. And if this meets it, it would just be a matter of y'all saying, hey, this is the goal, this is what we wanted to hit. So we move that we get this in final form and either bring the final ordinance back to you, but it's not going to look much different than this, except for getting rid of the red lines, or go ahead and finalize it, put it in final dress form for an ordinance, and send it to county council.
In my opinion, the meat of the document is the fact that we give public notice like we do for zoning appeals, change of zoning, and then this all contiguous property owners be part of that application. And both of those things seem to be explained in here pretty well. Yes, sir.
I make a motion that we approve the ordinance as written.
Here's a second.
I'll second that.
On to discussion regarding as written. I did have one question go ahead.
Go ahead.
I did have one question outside of the red, and since we were voting to approve the whole thing, going down to item C of 154C. And it says that county staff drive by every 2 years, and if things aren't being maintained, which maintenance appears to be 3 times of picking up trash, what happens if they come by and it's out? It says that we then lower the category or do a redesignation. My question becomes something like when we had the hurricane or the tornado or a high windstorm, and it's messy for 2 weeks, and then we meet, we're gonna ask when the 2-year inspection is gonna happen, and probably say, hey, can we have an inspection now? And then, but I was just curious as to, is that enough, or is that appropriate, or what happens if we do have a need? Do we have to wait 2 years for that need to be addressed? Is it a letter sent to the committee? Is it a letter sent to a designated person? And if so, do we need a designated person or entity on the application of who we call to say, hey, y'all need to pick up trash? Anyway, it was just a question in there.
It can certainly be tweaked to, every 2 years or as needed. I don't think we have a particular.
It was just, we just didn't have anything to say, if there was a need, we saw it dirty all of a sudden, it wasn't being addressed by the entity that said they were going to be addressing it. I don't want us to, one, automatically step it down a notch, but we don't really have a call to where we do something.
It could just be a I mean, if you want to make a change to it, it would be a motion to amend the current motion, which is to.
So would we amend it to having the application a contact person?
That's your.
Does that sound appropriate, or do we amend it to,
Well, who would you put in charge of the scenic highway?
so the applicant or organization that is making application for scenic highway, they're committing to 3 times a year to do trash pickup. And that is really what it's about. And so if we find that trash isn't being picked up, this line C says that we're going to inspect every couple of years to make sure that the applicant is doing their job of that 3 times a year trash pickup. But what happens if we have an event that causes a big mess on the highway, and it's not particularly their time for that organization to get together, and 3 weeks later, are we out there sending people as a county paying to have trash pickup, or is there a call that we can make to somebody? And I don't know that we have that clearly defined, that we're gonna call the applicant and say, hey, we've had complaints on that highway's messy. And I kind of think maybe we need to have it that the applicant's committing to receiving that phone call if we're getting complaints at the county level. So I'd like to make a motion that we ask Mr. Root to add in this document. Well, let's see, I can't make a motion until you
You can amend my motion.
To amend.
I'd like to make a motion to amend to include as written, plus that Mr. Root comes up that within the application, that the applicant is seeing a paragraph that says you'll be contacted if the county's receiving complaints to potentially address any need in a more immediate fashion. If that's the way you would suggest it, Mr. Root.
Yeah, that works, that's fine.
Do we want to put a time frame on that?
I'm missing where the applicant is committing to.
I think if they don't address it, then we come back to this that says we lower the category or redesignate, which means that we remove the,
Yeah, I'm just wondering, should it be 30 days, 90 days? I mean,
I think that we could address it that within 45 days it needs to be addressed, or they've got to have time to organize, but I would say 45 days it needs to be addressed.
So is that augmenting the motion, add a 45-day response period?
Yes. And does that go on the application, or does that go in this document?
I believe it needs to go in this document, and you would also put it on the application form.
Okay, they would include a phone number that you're the contact person.
You have a contact person, inspections as needed, 2 years would be the regular increments. Cover 45 days to act on it once
Okay.
notified.
That's my motion. Do I hear a second to that motion?
Second.
Any more on that? All in favor of that amendment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, any more conversation on Mr. Nix's motion to approve as written with that amendment? All right, all in favor of that, signify by saying aye.
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 Just again, as a point of order, and I put it out there and I should have followed up before you made that, but it's fine. Do you want me to bring this final version back to you all for your next meeting, or go ahead and, it's really just that one change, it's gonna read like, go ahead and send it to all the council?
I'm going to ask everybody here, I don't have a problem if you just send it because you're going to write it how it needs to be written. I'm not going to from there make a change over what the attorney is recommending.
So, yeah, I'll get it drafted, we'll get it teed up for a council meeting, make sure James has a copy so he can circulate it to you all. If you say, oh, that's not exactly it, then we can, pull back, punt and revise it. But it's a simple revision, so I should be able to hit it.
Okay? Very good. It takes care of 8. We are actually in a moment of adjournment unless anybody else has anything that they want to.
Yes, congratulations, first off. And the second thing is, like the item Tom had brought up and any items that we are wanting to view for us putting on the agenda, how do you want those brought to this committee?
I think that we ought to mention them in the commissioner comments, that we would like this introduced onto a minutes, in a future minutes, and then contact James or I during the week prior to, so that we can see if we can place it on that particular agenda. I want to do like we've been doing and kind of keep priorities as to the items that come on the agenda. But I do hope we have a real robust year this year with areas where we see that corrections need to be made to either 38 or 32, that we're able to address those like we've been doing. I think Mr. Markovich brought up a good one. I've seen a public notice sign on Kiwi School Road here this past week or for a couple of weeks there. And it seems like it was a retaining wall issue. So it does seem like something that needs to be addressed. Yes, sir.
Can I ask Mr. Markovich a question?
I don't have a problem with that unless somebody does. That sounds great.
What makes a retaining wall not a freestanding wall? Because a retaining wall is freestanding, correct?
Yes, it is. I mean, oftentimes it's holding back soil, but the soil is not holding that wall in place. The foundation of the retaining wall is what holds that wall in place. But it is basically a freestanding wall. I agree, but because it's not specifically listed that way in the ordinance is why staff has, that's how they're interpreting it, as a retaining wall is not a freestanding wall. That's staff's decision. And I'm just saying, if we put retaining wall in there, that just, it clears everything up. That's all. Or if we were to put in definitions, there's no definitions that defines any of that. And like a fence, there's no definitions for a fence. But, if all of a sudden somebody wanted to put up a rock fence, I don't know, what.
I'm hoping we don't go into definition of fences because that could be.
I'm about to say that's a can of worms. I don't think.
Oh, it is. There's no
But I
question.
think adding a simple word like retaining wall, I hate that somebody's having to go in front of the BZA just to get a retaining wall that's already existing rebuilt. So, thank you for bringing that up, and thank you. And yes, if we can bring them up in public comments, if there's something, just so the public knows, I do before Wednesday of the previous week, call around and ask if we're light on agenda items, is there something that we can put on or something that we need? So there may be times that I'm putting it on anyway, it's not necessarily part of the public comments. But if we can bring it up during public comments, it does just give one more notice out there that, hey, we're going to be talking about this in the future or near future. So I think that's great. So I will be, since we don't have an agenda item for this next month, while something may come up, if people have ideas of what they'd like to put on there, please call me.
I'd like to see retaining walls on there. I'd also like to revisit private right-of-ways.
Private right-of-ways versus public right-of-ways. Yep, it was something last year that we had not finished. We talked about several times and had not really addressed being finished. I would like to have ideas as we move forward into these next meetings. Anything that anybody sees that needs to be addressed, let's talk about them. So, anybody else have anything else? I look forward to a great 2025, and I'll make a motion to adjourn.